Welcome to Hotline with Ann Dookie on IETV. Crime is something that affects every one of us. It's a full-hour talk that we cannot even bring to the tip-in. It affects us all. This new stand your ground policy, does it create vengeance among people? Possible more homes are attacked than normal? As for example, let me give you an example. If a man's wife is murdered or some other relative, and he would call the police, instead would he seek his own justice? Would he feel that, well, there's right that he will get away, getting justice for himself, playing prosecutor and police? Let's welcome Mr. Steve Alvarez, professional project manager and outright commentator on national issues. Welcome, sir, to Hotline and IETV.
Good day. It's a pleasure talking to you guys.
Yes, Steve, if I may call you, it has been a while since we have spoken, since I was last on radio. By the way, what became of your political party, the DPTT? Let's begin with that.
Well, I'll tell you what.
In case our viewers are wondering if the party still exists.
Well, the party still exists, but over the last, say, 10 years or so, we've come to recognize that Trinidad and Tobago does not allow for third parties in terms of general elections. You get a chance to talk, you get a chance to be on TV, you get a chance to, make comments and so on. But in terms of the population supporting a third party, it has never happened. It has happened with the NAR and the COP when they found themselves in alliance with one of the two major parties. So a third party by itself have not been able to do that in Trinidad. In Tobago it's different, but in Trinidad that's not been the case because our politics in Trinidad is really sort of the core voters are really based on ethnicity, and because of that you have they supporting two of the major parties.
True. So you either would have the UNC or the PNM. And several other parties who think that they could come up, they will fall, by the way.
Definitely.
Yes. Let's go back to the topic we are discussing today, crime and the stand your ground policy. Do you think that this government aim to develop gated community policy is a political gimmick?
Well, let me go back a bit. It's always easier to look at something now and say, well, is the government doing what should be done? Are they doing things right? But you have to put things in perspective. What happened to Trinidad and Tobago since independence? You see, we lived, and most of us, and especially those are the older ones of us, would have lived in communities where we knew the police officers on patrol, we knew the sergeant at the station, and there was a structure in place that allowed for safe communities, and that structure was that police on patrol. Now, when I was much younger, those police on patrol would be walking or riding a bicycle, and if they had to go somewhere far, they would use the Land Rover that was at the police station. Now, there are 80-something communities in Trinidad and Tobago, distinct communities like Muruga, Princestown, La Brea, Point Fortin, distinct communities, Belmont, and these communities, every one of them had a police station, and that police station was headed by, in many instances, a police sergeant, and on rare occasions you'll have an inspector. Now that is what we inherited, and that structure of governance that allowed for community governance was not just a matter of policing, but in every one of those districts they had also a magistrate court. So when the police locked you up or charged you for something, within the week you would go to the magistrate court, and the district magistrate would either determine the matter or whether to send it to a higher court. So justice was immediate, justice was fast, and justice was fair, and that is what we inherited. But like most things, like say for example the train that we inherited, that we cut up the lines and make fence posts with, we take things that we did not understand. We did not understand the structure of governance. We did not understand how policing works. And so we are still now in the process, which is really, really sad, of trying to find an answer when the answer existed, say, since 1962. And that's where we are. So when you talk about standing your ground, let me give you an example. In those years, before independence, when you applied for a firearm, there were regulations as to where you keep that firearm. And you could have gone to the shop in the village and buy ammunition for that firearm. And that's why they have that book. And they how much they sell you and stuff like that. So we've taken, and people knew that. People knew that the average person would have had a gun in their home and so on. So there wasn't this fear of the man with the gun, because as a matter of fact, as a kid, I would see these guys walking down the road with a gun on their shoulder, because there was regulations as well as to how you transport your gun and so on. So we've gotten rid of all those things, and unfortunately, almost everything we've done seems to be wrapped in some level of corruption. So you have to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody to get a firearm. And when you do, you know, it's a whole very convoluted system that is not very transparent and it's not very professional.
Doesn't the government say that they are going to make firearm users' license more accessible?
Well, let me give you an example of how governance is so difficult in Trinidad. When Gary Griffith was the Commissioner of Police, he recognized that these books, these firearm users permit that you have, if you should actually see some of these books that these people have, because it's a physical book that after a few years it started to deteriorate and fall apart and so on. And he came in and he said, listen, this is old time thing, let's get a card and let's make this. And he did a fantastic card, a nice little card with all the information, all the stuff and so on. But then the police, after he left, said that card is not legal. So rather than say, listen, let's make the card legal through legislation, and that is what we are dealing with in Trinidad and Tobago. So let me go to the standing ground law, for example, now. Imagine you decided, you know what? Somebody's coming to my place and I'm going to empty the clip on them. So you feel your life is threatened by someone coming into your house and you have a legal firearm and you empty the clip. What happens immediately after that? Immediately after that, the police come and they look at the stuff and they take away your firearm, pending investigation. And heaven knows, you know how long those things go, that the investigation can take years. So now, everybody in the place know that you are no longer armed. So you're now vulnerable. Now, how that can make sense? If you're going to say to people, stand your ground, you should say to them, listen, after you shoot whoever you shoot, we're going to take that gun for forensics and all that stuff, but you, in the meantime, will be entitled to another one. So that you'll never be without a firearm, because you're already qualified to own a firearm.
Because you have a license, yes, to hold one.
Yes. So you see, simple things like that would have made the legislation make sense. But when you just say that, and what happens is that the citizen is the person that ends up in trouble, you know. The politicians never end up in trouble. The citizens are the ones that have to end up facing all kind of investigations and all kind of laws and rules that are destined to punish their punitive measures, rather than try to make life easy for them.
So, Mr. Alvarez, in other words, there should have been more community consultation before these laws were passed.
Well, you know, I don't know if it's consultation of people just don't listen, because this very issue I'm talking about what happens to someone with their firearm after using it was brought up, or I can't remember, but I remember reading about it on the newspaper. Some lawyer would have brought it up, but it was just ignored. So I don't think that the government doesn't know that. I think that what they wanted to do is to come up with something that make it look like you're dealing with this crime situation. So it's an appearance that does not make sense.
So they just want to see how much legislation that they can pass.
Yeah, No, because it makes it look good, but it makes sense. We talk about the fact that
It
we
would be
inherited.
another tick in their book.
Yes, it is. But think about this. We talked about the fact that they had the district courts. The districts haven't gone away. I am from Muruga. Right now, the Muruga Magistrates Court is still there,
It's there, yes.
overgrown and rotting. Right?
Labre, Rio Claro,
Yeah.
And
So
so
this,
on.
as a matter of fact, I saw one in Mayaro as well.
yes.
Yeah. So these courts the physical courts are still there, but they have no district magistrates to go and to see them. So why not, if you are really wanting to deal with crime in a serious way, why you not say, listen, effective, whatever there will be magistrates courts and everything so that they
Say
can be
every
immediate-
Wednesday we will have court in Moruga.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Every time I
they-
visit Moruga, I take a photograph of the court because of the historic nature of the building.
Yes. Well, I remember the shop dealers were always happy for court day because everybody went to get a drink and so on in the rum shop on a Wednesday.
And then
But
a
I'm
tiny
saying-
shop across the road.
Yes, but I'm saying these are things that can happen now that don't need a lot of legislation because the legislation existed already.
It already is there. It is
Yeah,
just
so
not
you can
implemented.
refine this, and you can refine it and make it more a bit more modern, but get the staff in the appropriate magistrates courts so that would take the burden of the judiciary as it stands today. Because one of the things that the Chief Justice is talking about is saying, listen, we have to find a way to deal with this backlog of courts.
Well,
of
listen,
cases.
Mr. Alvarez, when I see the Princestown court, I wonder if it is just an opportunity for the government to pay rent when you have all these other courts existing, because they are paying rent in the building
Yeah.
that they are renting now in
But you know-
Princestown.
It's amazing. If you were to go to one of these courts, what you see over and over again is the magistrate would say, "Are we ready to proceed?" And 9 out of 10 times the police would say, "Not yet," or the defense would say, "Not yet," depending on who is ready. And you hear postpone 6 months, postpone 6 months, and postpone 6 months. And many of these cases have been going on for years. I know personally of cases that have been outstanding for over 10 years. That's still not brought. There's still no justice to that. For that person. Now, luckily, now think about this carefully. In some instances, the person is out on bail, so they live a normal life. But there are other instances where people could not have access to bail and they spend a lot of years in remand. So it's not a fair system. And you have to find a way. There's only one solution. And that solution is to have swift justice. And that's all in the hands of the government. And as I said, just like the other stuff that we spoke about earlier, these things were put in place. Just like we talked about how the police patrols worked with the police stations and so on, these things were what we inherited. It's not like we have to go and start all over again. I can't think of any older person that I've spoken to who don't recall police and patrol in their community. What about you? Do you recall
Community,
police?
yes, community police, it was a big thing. In fact,
Yeah.
they held community meetings and so on in the
Yeah, well, let me
community
give you an
centers. How many community centers are active, by the way, and members of the community or the young ones would come and the police would come to the schools and so on to educate them? That doesn't exist anymore.
No, as a matter of fact, we've broken down, our whole communities are broken down. I grew up in the Grand Shimen Community Center playing tennis and beating pan and so on, because it was this where everybody came in the afternoon there was a community spirit. And you know, we have destroyed the communities. And that's it. I don't want to go too much off topic, but I want to give you an example of
Sure.
what we did so you could understand how we messed things up. We inherited a system of counties and wards. So that in the south area, you have the St. Patrick County Council, you have the Mayaro County
You have
Council,
Victoria,
you
yes.
have Victoria County Council, and so on. Right? And they were responsible for ensuring that the roads were repaired, that the street signs were correct. So most of the times, and they were also responsible for cutting the grass on the side of the road. So that I knew the guy who's cutting the grass on the side of the road, because he belonged to the village. I knew the guy who rode the bicycle and painted all the street signs because he belonged to the area. So people in the community had permanent jobs, not CPAP or URP jobs, permanent jobs, and they also had a pride in their community. Now that structure is what we inherited. And that structure exists in the United States of America today. It exists in England today. It exists in Barbados today, where people in the community are employed by the community to look after the community. Now, that's how you have community pride. That's
and if it works there, it can very well work here.
Well, it worked here before.
So what
we've done is that we've taken that out, and we now have what we call regional corporations. Now, think about it. Moruga belongs to the
Princestown Regional Corporation. Yes.
If you go to that corporation, ask those people in that corporation, so tell me, do you know anything about Figari Trace in Moruga? Do you know anything about Marak and Laloum?
You know Saunders Trace? They will ask, where is this?
Yeah, you know
Edward Trace?
And you can't blame them because they're not supposed to know. They're in their community.
Do they know that Saunders Trace lead to Guayari? I'm sure many of them don't know that.
You see? And this is what I'm saying. And take, for example, I wrote recently about our tourism package. The hanging bridge in Grand Chimay, Moruga, is structurally sound. It just needs sandblasting, painting, and some new planks and so on. They are actually allowing this. They only have two remaining in Trinidad. That's the one in Moruga and the one in Blanchishes. They are allowing this thing
to deteriorate. Spring Bridge. Yes.
You know, and of course the regional corporation and them don't care about that because they're from Princestown.
No, it's in a terrible state actually. I took some photographs of it a couple months ago and I was surprised and appalled at the state and structure of it. It should have been maintained as a tourist attraction.
Yes. But if you don't belong to the community, if you
wouldn't care.
You don't care, exactly.
Simply, you wouldn't care.
You don't care. The Larry Tread Beach is one of the nicer beaches in the Southland. But the road to the Larry Tread Beach now is so bad that unless you have a donkey cart, you can't go to the beach. You know, unless you want to mash up your car, of course. You know, and then you want to know, well, why there's no agriculture in those areas and so on, because you don't have the access roads. That road, think about it, 60, 70 years ago, that road was in pristine condition. So how did we allow that and the other things in our country to fall apart to the level that is today? And that's what we're talking about today when you talk about crime and so on. It wasn't like that 60, 70 years ago. And it's us, we who have allowed things to fall apart, to get so bad in our country.
Yes, and this first part of the program, we are looking about where it all started. I mentioned earlier at the beginning about the aim to develop gated community policies is just a political gimmick. Just recently, when businessman Danny Guerra was his home was riddled with bullets. His son home, his son property is in a gated community, Mr. Alvarez, with control access, and still it was riddled with bullets. Let's take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we will be talking a bit about the 16-year-old boy who was detained by police and various views on it. We'll be right back.
Are you renewing your motor, homeowner or business insurances shortly? Then call Kalyani Limited, agency for Tatil, for a competitive quote. With 2 locations, Todd Street, El Socorro and 5 Rivers, Aruca. Please call us at 221-5051 or 227-5051. Kalyani Limited, agency for Tatil, building relationships exceeding expectations.
Who doesn't love a good story? Science is no different. Breakthroughs in medicine, technology, or astronomy didn't just happen overnight. It's stories of lucky breaks, hardships, biases, serendipity, and tragedies. Even stories that make you laugh. There were battles of ideas, sometimes lasting hundreds of years and even thousands, until we got it just right. So sit back and relax, grab that cup of tea, and join me as we explore stories from science.
Welcome back, viewers, and welcome back, Mr. Alvarez. Yes, I mentioned the 16-year-old boy who was detained in the preventative detention order recently. Now, there have been many views tossed back and forth. Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander, he has defended the government decision in issuing the PDO against the 16-year-old boy. Even the children's authority, they said that when a state of emergency is there, children are protected by law. What are your views on this?
Well, unfortunately, we have a lot of young people who are introduced to criminal activity at a very early stages in their life. They don't know any better. And because of that, you find that they are really killers. Some of them are actually shooting people and killing them and so on, because for them, for the young person, a gun is exciting and the life doesn't have much value. And what we inherited is that we had the youth training center, YTC. That's another thing that we inherited from the British. And there you would take these young people and keep them away from the criminal elements, and then you could try to rehabilitate those people. And that's what we have to work on. It's not a matter of trying to say because he's that young he's supposed to be free, because that they are exposed to dangerous people, and these dangerous people are using these vulnerable young people to get their things done. But I want to go back a little bit to that same Gera situation. There was the video of these young men pulling up in a white car and shooting this man as he's entering into his vehicle. Now, this I think happened in the Sandy Grande area. How do you come to terms with these young men getting away in a small community as Sandy Grande, where they don't have a whole lot of roads, and they have to drive out of where that community is to escape? So I again am saying that our problem in terms of dealing with crime is that we are reactive. So someone calls the police station and say, listen, there's a crime going on, so and so. And then the police will say, let's see if we have a vehicle that if we could leave in the yard, but the sergeant might be taking the vehicle to carry his children out to school or something. It's really, really unprofessional. Those vehicles are supposed to be unpatrolled at all times, so that when someone calls, you can say, patrol car A or patrol car B, can you respond? Now again, a lot of people perhaps did not like Gary Griffith's approach to policing. But that's one of the things that he did. He ensured that you have these cars tracked by GPS technology so that you know where the cars are and they're on patrol out
At
there.
all times, yes. I think they should return to that system.
They have to. It's the only way. It's the only way it works, because our system right now is a sort of hit and hope thing. The young girl who just got buried and she got cremated at the Show of Peace recently.
Yeah, with the bats, yeah.
Yeah. The community, everybody know who the suspect is, and this guy hasn't been found as yet, and that is because there's no active effort to find this person. Have you realized that whenever we need to find somebody or we need to find something, you have to go to the hunters group? You have a police service, you have a Coast Guard service, you have a set of soldiers, all right, the army, but the regiment, sorry, but you can't have them find people that are lost and so on. You have to ask the hunters to help out. The hunters are the people, and you know why? Because they are the motivated group. They want to find the people. They want to make things happen. And you have to get your police and your regiment and all your defense people to to become proactive, to believe that this is their country and we're going to do whatever we can for the betterment of our country. Now, the way that happens, and the only way that happens, is that you have to be inspired to believe in your country and to believe in your government. But our problem goes back to what we spoke about at the beginning, and that in Trinidad, especially, not so much Tobago, because Tobago don't seem to have those kind of problems, but in Trinidad, where you have this big ethnic divide, there's always this feeling that, am I doing what to make this other group look good? Or and that's where we have a problem. And for us who grew up in South, especially in places like Princeton and Barrackpore and Penal and so on, there's been that great intermingling. We live Indian and African. We listen to Indian music. We go to pujas and we go to the mosque. And there was always that intermingling of people.
Yes, definitely.
And there was not that great divide. But as you get to the north, you find there's a greater divide, because they've never had. If you ask, for example, the average young man from Laventille or Belmont or some of Indigo Martin, have you ever been to a puja? They're like, they even know what a puja is.
True.
So there's a distrust, there's a disconnect in the society.
Yes, there's a disconnect.
We have not made the effort to build things. We did a few years ago, long ago, through the Prime Minister's Best Village competition and so on. We tried to have an integration of the cultures and so on. But instead of doing that, we kind of want ours. So that it's so difficult for us to feel that sense of nationalism, that even our coat of arms, when we decided that, okay, we should have the steel pan, there's a sector saying, so why the steel pan, not the tassa?
Why not the tassa? Yes.
You see? So there's not that sense of...
There's always that tug of war.
Yes, and that's why we cannot arrive at national solutions, and that's why it's for me personally it's been very painful, because I have tried in my political life to say, listen, let me form a political party that can be attractive to both sides. But after losing the deposit twice, I realized that they're not interested in that. So then I actually worked, with the UNC.
Well, you can work on sharing your views like you are doing now.
I worked with the UNC and I said, and we formed what was called the UNC Alliance, a sort of alliance of parties and so on. But again, as soon as the political party gets into service, you have all these what I call political parasites, people who looking for a job.
Oh yeah.
That they just calling up this one and calling up that one and say, you remember me? And it becomes, the politics become one of contracts, one of who knows who, and one of what I can get in return, instead of saying, how do I contribute towards building?
How do I serve my country?
Exactly. And that's where we are right now. And I know so many people, so many really good people that I worked with during those times that are willing to come with this government now and say, listen, let's build this thing. Let's build this thing. Because I think the UNC always have the best opportunity, because they've been a sort of Indo-based party of South people who have been neglected for so many years, that they now have a chance to come and say, let's rebuild this thing. Let's do this together. We're not as you think we are, But rather than do that, you find that people have, again, get into this thing about who can get a what job, who can get what position, instead of looking at the actual solutions. Why I am so glad that you actually called me so that we can talk about the solutions. You are focused on the solutions. Steve, how do we solve this crime problem?
Yeah.
Steve, does this stand your ground legislation, is it adequate? Does it arrive at the solution that we're trying to get to? And those are the discussions that
this is what I'm questioning, because as the days go by, you are seeing, for example, the emergency power of regulation used during the state of emergency, right? Some citizens might think it is advantageous on them, although the legislation has been passed.
Yeah, well, these are what I call stopgap measures. You have a situation, you have a state of emergency, so now we can actually go there and hold the bad guys and so on. But we just came out of the first state of emergency where we had over 30 or 40 people arrested that had to be released. So how do you really solve this if you don't fix the problem? And the problem is getting swift justice. The problem is police. The answer is swift justice. The answer is police patrols. The answer is a concerted effort of the state to say, how do we deal with these problems? But to just, and one of the good or bad things about social media is that everybody wants plenty likes now. You see, they want to say he was on social media.
Everybody wants to have a say.
Yes.
Yes.
But and they love that. They love the popularity. But are you dealing with the issues? And that's what we have to do. We have to go back to dealing with the issues. I am appalled at the nature of our roads. But you can't fix the road from the Ministry of Works. You think Jaylene John know that Laloon have a pothole right outside a big pothole right outside the playground? She don't know that. You think we just talked about the bridge in that you saw, you took a picture of not too long ago in Moruga. You think Jaylene John know that bridge exists? You know? So we have
and
to
that is where we go back to the communities.
You have to go back to the community. That's the only way that everything works. If you go to any of the developed countries in the world, even the communist countries like Russia and so on, China, the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, anywhere you go, communities is what builds the country.
Well,
so
that is how you will pinpoint the problem, Mr. Alvarez.
Of course. Let me give you an example. The average Trinidadian, they would fly to New York or they would fly to Florida. Well, most people go to Florida now because they have friends and family there, right? The Prime Minister just recently got an award from Lauderhill.
Yeah.
Lauderhill in Florida. Now, Lauderhill is a small township. They have their own police, their own mayor. And they look after that little section of Florida called Lauderhill. And they have many other little sections. They have, Miramar, they have, all parts of although you have a county called Broward County, you have these small communities in Broward County, Coral Springs and so on. So all of these areas have their own police, they have their own management structure, and that's what community management is all about. And that's why when we grew up, there was the Moruga County Council, the Moruga Community Development people. That's what the people who ran there was a man in the shop, Lee Singh, that had the key to the community center and so on. So, it
Godfrey Lee Singh.
Yes, Godfrey. So those people in the community ensure that the community was what it's supposed to be. And that's how you have to go back. And that's how you have nice, healthy competition. Why do you think we're doing so badly in cricket and so on now? Because the competition between Bastia and Laloon and between St. Mary's and say Grand Chimay no longer exists.
It no longer exists, yes.
Right, so that the cricketers don't get to the higher levels. We don't have the implements in the schools and so on that we used to do. We've really messed up this country in an end. We've really taken a fantastic country that we got with all these rules and all these regulations and messed it up and decided that we're going to find a solution when we already had the solution there. And that's a very, very unfortunate
We need
thing.
to go back to basics.
Yes, and the basics are international best practices. And what is really, really great though is that because of the communications that we have today, whether it's computer, whether it's AI, whatever, we can get online and see what works and what doesn't work and why it doesn't work. For example, the stand your ground legislation did not work. It did not do what it was supposed to do in Florida when it came across. And there's that famous case, you remember, when the guy got killed from just walking through a shortcut through somebody's yard and so on. I can't remember his name right now, but there's a lot of protests and so on that happened in Florida. So you have to look at it and say, do I want that? How does it work? What do I tweak to make it work and appropriate for us?
I noted, Mr. Alvarez, that Minister of Justice Devish Maharaj, he pointed out that Parliament is soon to consider parole legislation, right? Now, doesn't that legislation already exist? What are your views on this?
Well, when I heard that, I actually thought that perhaps he's looking at parole as per the United States. So, and let me tell you, that to me is that could be a dangerous thing, because what it does is that the only thing it helps is that it helps the prison population. So in other words, instead of you being locked
It
up
would
all
reduce the complexity
Yeah.
and the crowdedness of the prisons.
Yes. So instead of being locked up, they put you on parole. But we have parole, like you said. There are parole officers in Trinidad and Tobago that check on people and to make sure that you maintain while you're on parole. So that it exists to an extent, but not like it does in the United States. And I think what he's perhaps going to do is put the legislation that makes it mandatory that someone can access parole. But it's not the answer, though. It may very likely make the criminal more emboldened. Because right now, as it stands, because our justice system is so bad, these young men go out there and shoot people and get a lawyer and go back out and shoot again.
And shoot
go out.
again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because they will not be brought to justice. And they know that. And they know who the lawyers are, and they know how to access the thing. And we have to start by saying to them, this is the end. Crime is not, I don't know the average trader ever lost someone to crime, but I'm telling you, it's a very, very sad thing to see your child or your relative bleeding on the side of the road because some young man decided to use this gun and empower himself. And then not only that, in the 90s, there was a bottle of Hennessy and on television and on some video laughing at the fact that he just killed somebody and so on. And because they don't feel that justice is going to be done. And we have to deal with that. We have to let you know that if you commit a crime, you will do the time immediately, not 10 years from now or 15 years from now. And those are what we have to sit down and do. And every year, not every year, every 5 years when there's a new government, there's a sort of hope in the country. People are like, oh my God.
At this time it will be addressed.
Yes. We
Will
always
it be
say,
addressed this time? Yes, promises.
we always get that feeling that, wow, boy, this time around. And you go and you see the same thing happening over and over.
Again and again.
And you say, my God. And that is a major part of that is because you don't even understand the problem. You don't understand that it's local government that you have to deal with. One of the other things is that, and I remember when Bastille Pandey was Prime Minister, one of the things that he said, because when he came in, he was the first really person of East Indian descent to be a Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So he felt that, I will go in there and I will make the changes. And then he said I remember him saying that, you know what? We don't have the kind of power that I think we have. Because the way the things are structured, the permanent secretary and that whole bureaucracy in the government prevents me from doing what I want to do.
Of course.
And that is something, if you recall, Donald Trump in the United States was saying too. He says, I can't do some of the things I want to do because of the constraints. Now, it's a good thing to have check and balances. It's a good thing to have an independent public service. But it's also very important that the person with the vision for a better tomorrow be given the chance to govern. And that's where I suppose you have to sit down and say, what legislation do I need to change? And public service reform is a major part of that, because you have to reform that whole public service. You can't have, I'll give you an example. I was chairman of the Statutory Authority Service Commission at the first Rampersad administration. And the Statutory Authority Service Commission, we appoint people to all these statutory bodies in the country. And when I started, we'd go to a meeting and you'll have an appointment for 3 or 4 persons. And I'm saying, we have a backlog of over 100 and something people. And it's because somebody downstairs on a file would bring up whatever notes they want to bring whoever they want. The public servant determines who gets the promotion.
Of course, Mr. Alvarez. Let's take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion on public servants and its impact, and also we will be ending with crime prevention and what it involves. It involves proactive strategies to reduce the risk, opportunities, and causes of criminal activity, rather than merely just reacting to offenses. We'll be right back.
In our lives, there are moments that need to be remembered. Are you hosting a Ramayana Yagya, religious or cultural event or celebration? Would you like to have it aired live on IETV or recorded for playback later? We will air your program on IETV and IE Radio, with your viewers joining locally and internationally. Your family and friends worldwide can view on www.ietvtt.com or listen on ieradiott.com. To make arrangements, call or WhatsApp IETV at 784-9880. Let us record your cherished moments and share it.
Welcome back, viewers, to Hotline with Ann Dookie with Steve Alvarez. Mr. Alvarez, welcome back. Before we went on a break and I abruptly interrupted you, you were talking about how we need to reform the public service.
Yes, because one of the things that happens is that for the government to operate, they depend almost 100% on the public service. So although you have the legislation, and the legislation is passed and proclaimed by the president, it now has to be implemented. And in some instances, this implementation takes years because some public servants don't share that view of the government. And they will just shelve whatever it is they want and so on. And you have to, and the same thing we talked about when it comes to the firearm legislation. We know the rules are, the laws are, but unless you know somebody to do something for you to push it through, it doesn't happen. It happens if someone wants to get a passport renewed. If you don't know somebody, if you know somebody, you can have your passport within 2-3 days. If you don't know somebody, you have to take whatever period of time it takes. The fact that something can happen quickly means that it can happen for everyone. And you have to deal with this public service in a way that is proactive, in a way that makes somebody want to do something. And all that comes about, really in the spirit of what we talked about, and we've been talking about since this program started, is the fact that we need to get people to have a feeling of nationality, and I belong to this country. This is my country, and I want to be part of this. And they have to see the government of Trinidad and Tobago as their government, not as them people, but as them people. And the government themselves have to govern for all people, and their policies must be. You can't say as a government that it's our time now, so we're going to do, what it is for one sector of society. So how do you get that feeling of national spirit? It's a very big challenge for all of us. But it can only work if there's an effort to do so. In other words, somebody in the politics have to decide, I am going to fix this. I am going to do that. And as I said earlier, and I'm going to say it again because it's worth repeating, especially to this UNC government of today, that whenever the UNC gets into service, they have an opportunity to look at all the wrongs that you've been complaining about for so long. And
for 10 years, yes, people have been complaining. They have a chance to look at that and address it.
Yes. But you don't want it to be an extension of the same thing.
I find come and government go. I have been in journalism over 26 years, and I have been noticing the same thing. On the political platform, they would preach something else, and they would preach they're doing this against the current administration. And then when they get into office, they forget. They do their own thing.
Well, think about it. Let's look at the most basic. You go to the parliament, And for the last 10 years, there is this thumping of desk. Somebody make a speech, and go boom, 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 everybody hit the desk. Oh, heaven's sake, man. No, you're there. Show them that you're different. Show them that you're more intelligent, if you say that you are. Show them that you're more articulate. Show them that you have lifted the level of parliamentary behavior. But when you get there and you're thumping, that's just like it was done 10 years ago. The country look and say, well, you know, what are we dealing with? And that's what we have to deal with. When we vote for a change that we anticipate that you're going to have a certain level of civility, a certain level of decorum, a certain demand, a certain desire to make the country better. And we have to do that. And I suppose right now, if you go to talk to the PNM in opposition, they will tell you that I'm going to change the standards. We've made mistakes in the past, and we're going to fix this now. And if you give me that chance, if you only give me a chance again, we are going to be better.
Well, this is what I noted. I noticed Dr. Rowley speaking about some of the problems that exist now, but it was there when he was in government.
Exactly. So they
forget they were in government just over a year ago.
Yeah,
and the problem didn't come overnight.
No, that's what I'm saying. They say these things and to convince somebody to vote for them again. But the only way you can get someone to really vote for you and to support you 100% is if you do what is required. And that's why, if you ask, and I have to, because I know time is we're going to be closing up just now, but I have to bring this point up because it affects a lot of people in our society, and I show you how government can be very punitive. When you vote for a government, you vote for your family, really, yeah? You're voting for a better life for your family, a better life for your country, and so on. That's what you vote for. You're not voting because you like the prime minister, or you like this minister, or you like that one. You're voting because you think that you deserve a better opportunity. Now, think about this. You have this government at this time doing a legislation that takes money away from a lot of the poor people who would have invested their savings in putting an extension to their house, or a room under their house, or buy a little property next to theirs so they can rent, so that when they retire they can have a little income.
Yeah.
This is not a lot of money. No matter how you twist it, it's not a lot of money. You're talking about a rent between $3,000 and $6,000 a month is what they make. And it can barely thing their groceries. And there's some of them would have spent their entire savings to get this property up to rental standards. Now, as a government, you should encourage people to be self-reliant and to do like that.
To be entrepreneurs.
You're asking these people to register and pay for making an effort to find a home for them. Shouldn't that legislation, and I'm asking this not only to you but to Trinidad and Tobago, shouldn't that legislation be for commercial properties only? Because commercial properties rent to the government, like they say, like the courthouse in
courthouse in Princestown.
Right? They rent to the government. They rent to big buildings, big business, warehouses, yes. Right? They're taking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So they should pay taxes. But for the ordinary person who's renting a back room, the ordinary person who bought two houses and say that my children will be taken care of for the rest of their life, they shouldn't have to be subject to this punitive measure of taxation. And I'm sure you ask anybody who have voted for this government and said, do you agree with that legislation? And they would say no. They would say, oh, I don't mind the commercial people paying. So all those people who rent into the government, all those people who rent into these big businesses, all those people who rent in these big buildings all over the place, let them register and let them pay taxes. But for the average homeowner, it shouldn't be it. So, and we have to govern as a people in the interest of every person. The poor man, the man who wants to drive his little car home and he just have to maneuver around 15 potholes just to get to that place. Think about the money that he has to spend to change rubbers and shocks and all kind of things. Think about that man. Think about the children who have to go to school and have to get up early in the morning to get to school on time because the traffic is so badly. What are we doing to fix things like that? And let's think about those people. And let's make legislation and governance that's focused on fixing things for the ordinary man. Because the big people don't have to worry about it. They don't have to deal with the issues that we have. And they are not the one that puts people in government. It's the ordinary man, the hundreds of thousands of us, that 300 or 400,000 voters, that it's the poor people that put this government there. And oh gosh, I'm just saying, let's help them too. Let's do something to make them feel that their vote was worthwhile.
Yeah.
And it's very sad to sit back and especially people who have sacrificed for their political parties and have made done the kind of work that they need to do, to see them now, to see people who have never done anything. I spent years with this Prime Minister, you know. I spent years when we were trying to build that UNC alliance. And while I was doing that, there were people who were cussing up this Prime Minister, saying all kind of nasty things about her, and then now in her cabinet. And it's on record. It's on record. They say she's this, she's that, she's lazy. Oh, the worst of things they said about her. They're in her cabinet today. And the people who worked, who strive to say, listen, let's build a better thing, you don't even know them.
You don't even hear about them. They are tossed on the side. Yes, I was there back then. I'm still here today. Moving on to another topic very quickly before we return to crime, because we only have 10 minutes again on the program. The discussion is so interesting, Mr. Alvarez. We'll have to have you back another time. Moving on to immigration and all these venues who are getting work permits and so on and being registered. What are your views on that?
Well, this is a fantastic thing. I tell you what, immigration has always been negative and positive depending on how you look at it. So right now they're doing registration. I think they're now re-registering people. Mm-hmm. But that's not what's required. What you really require is to know what are the skill sets of the people that you have. Is this one? If someone, for example, is a doctor, someone is a teacher, someone is a technician in one area, and you utilize those human capital to the benefit of your country. But if you don't know who you're dealing with, because you also have criminals who are running, people who have run gangs and so on, and guns and violence and so on. So there's a negative and positive, and you have to screen the people that you're going to allow into your country. And they're now, I think, they're now saying that we're going to get assistance. I think the Prime Minister is saying that we now would be getting assistance from the United States of America, so we know if you're coming here whether you're good or bad. But it also points to the fact that we have very porous borders. The fact that you could have registration of over 100,000 or 50,000 people coming. How did they get here? They didn't come through the airport. You know? So it tells you of your deficiencies. But we have to get to the point of utilizing the skills of the people that are here, and the ones that are bad that we should get rid of. And I'll tell you why. When we invest in our children, we send them to primary school, we send them to secondary school, then we send them to university, and it costs us a lot of money as a country to get a graduate. So if you're getting a free graduate from another country, then you're lucky. It didn't cost you anything. So now you have to use that ability to your, that person to your advantage. So immigration by itself is not something that you can just snap your finger and deal with. You have to look at and weed out what you have and to get the best of what you have from the people that are there.
Back to crime. Tell our viewers how crime starts with individual responsibility.
Well, one of the things that we have been unfortunately bombarded with in this time of our life and this time of our existence is this disbelief in God and church and so on. If you look at the people who are coming out of the Catholic schools, out of the Anglican schools, out of the Hindu schools, out of the Muslim schools, the religious schools, you find that the people who have a sense of responsibility because they have some belief in something greater than themselves. And when you don't do that, when all you see is money and wealth and power, and there's no allegiance to a higher authority, then it becomes no big thing to kill somebody. It becomes no big thing to rape somebody. It becomes no big thing to break into somebody's house. So that system that we inherited again, because what we inherited was a religious-based school system. So most of us would have gone to an Anglican school or a Catholic school or a Hindu school or whatever. But now when you have government school, which is religious, they have no belief in anything. You have young people without a sense of direction. And even if you want to stay irreligious and you don't want to bring religion into anything, and you have to find a way to instill values into the young people. And one of the things you can do, which is something that takes you away from that, is in sports, is in cultural activities, the steel pan and so on, the tassel groups and so on. You have to get people involved in something that makes them see value to their life.
Again, it comes back to the community.
Yes, and that's why, if you recall, and sometimes we come with some good solutions and then we mess it up. One of the things we had was a few years ago is that we had trades in the schools. Now, if you look at those people who went to those junior secondary schools where they had welding and they had carpentry and they had plumbing
woodwork and so on, yes.
Yeah, a lot of those people are now the contractors, the big contractors of today.
True.
We should. It would have been so nice to have a whole lot more licensed electricians, a whole lot more licensed plumbers, a whole lot more mechanics and so on. And because not everyone is academically inclined, and so we should have to hold on to that model and improve on that model instead of just letting it fall apart. I went to the San Juan Secondary School and I looked at the workshops that they had. Oh my God, they were modern workshops, woodworking and so on. They had lathes, they had band saws, they had all these things for woodworking and so on. They just left to rot and rust because they no longer made that part of their educational program for the school. And that's something that we messed up. Take, for example, who would have believed that we would actually close down the hotel school when so many people graduated from there? Who would believe that we would have allowed the John Donaldson Technical Institute to be where it is today? So we need to get back to giving the young people a purpose for living, whether it's trade, whether it's sports, whether it's culture. And if you don't do that, they're going to be in the hands of some really nasty people out there who are selling drugs and guns, and then we will have that criminal situation. So you have, as a government, because we can always talk about it, but as a government, we have to make a focus on providing alternatives to crime. And again, it goes back. If this government should learn one lesson and do one thing differently, it should be to restore communities.
Mr. Alvarez, thank you so much for your time. We have unfortunately run out of time. We will have to join you another time for further discussion on this topic. Despite technological advancements, humanity is currently in a state of moral decay all over. I noticed on one of your posts on Facebook, I saw this interesting quote on your page, and I just wanted to share it with our viewers. When elephants fight, it is only the grass that suffers. I am Ann Dookie. Thank you for joining us.